Tonight we're at Titan Garage's Archerfield Speedway and we're down the pits to have a talk with Andrew Shirley and have a look around the rear end of a sprint car. Andrew, you've been around the game for a little while. What are the differences like maybe between, say, this rear, like the rear end of a sprint car compared to, say, like maybe a road car?
Oh, they're completely different. We got what we have here is basically we've got our bird cage with the radius rod hooks to there, right rear arm, and the Jacob's ladder, which is like a parallel, holds the rear end when it goes through its movements. The motion stays centre in the race car basically, so it's like a parallelogram. And obviously we got a bearing inside the bird cage because the axle's a live axle in the rear end. It's back to your torsion bar, which is basically then dictates what you do with your suspension for ride heights and things like that. We choose to run a brake on the right rear of this car. Some guys use them on the left rear. I've tried both ways, and I feel that the right rear brake's better for the way my driving style and the way I like the race car. So yeah, and we got the caliper that mounts onto the bird cage. And yeah, that's pretty much the right-hand corner of a race car.
So looking at here, so we've got some right rear spaces here to move the right tyre in and out, depending on what sort of track you're doing?
That's right. I mean, this is what we move around all night long, depending on the track conditions. I mean, some nights when it's really hooked up, we'll have the wheel right out, which we just put more spaces in there, within spaces it out and unhooks the race car on the entry of the corner. And then obviously as the night slickens off, we'll start knocking spaces out and bringing the wheel in just to get some side bite and be able to keep the car in a straight line through the middle of the corner. So yeah, so that's pretty much what happens there. We got different offset wheels as well, which same sort of thing was what the spacers do. We can bring the wheel in even further with a more offset on the wheel. So yeah, so that's pretty much what happens.
So that's one major setup point. Also looking at torsion bars. So looking at over here. So this is how you adjust the torsion bar in there.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, we got all different weight torsion bars in the Transporter. For once again, it's a bit like the wheels and the offsets and that, depending on what sort of racetrack we get dished up, whether it's wet and heavy and hooked up or whether it's dry and slick. We'll change the torsion bars to suit, and obviously we can weight jack each corner of the race car with the stops. So and that's a pretty vital part of the race car to keep an eye on.
So when you say weight jack with the stops, that's actually sort of putting a bit of preload to move the car up and down.
Exactly. Like there's a stop there and a bolt, and you wind more weight into it, obviously, and it raises the right height of the race car. So obviously as the track's hooked up, we'll have the right height lower, and as it slickens off, we'll wind it up, which then in turn puts more drive on the back wheels and gets it off the corner straighter.
So let's say here at Archerfield, often we see guys sort of bouncing off the wall a little bit. Yeah. How much damage does that do to, like, say, because it's all very lightweight componentry, what's the first thing that usually goes?
It's first thing that usually goes that. I mean, when the rear end's nice and square and everything's perfect, the rear end you should be able to grabble and rattle it like that. And normally the first thing that goes is the aluminium straps, and then you'll crumple the ladder, which then starts to bind the race car up. And I mean, depending on what sort of racetrack you're on, if it's a real gut slick, dry, dusty racetrack, sometimes after you've whacked the wall, it actually tightens the car up and goes a little bit better. So, but 9 times out of 10 it'll disadvantage you. Yeah, but that's normally what goes. And if you hit it really hard, well then obviously you bend all your rear arms and knock the rear end right out of the race car. So
let's say you do have a bit of an incident, say in a heat. What can you do to maybe get the, like, because it's obviously difficult to make it really straight? Yeah. What sort of things do you have, like a jig or anything that you can do to make sure it's all straight? No,
well basically we have this assembly here, which is your bird cage, your radius rod and your arm. We basically got another complete setup spare in the truck that are all preset, ready to go straight on the race car. So in an emergency, even if you only bend one part of the component, rather than trying to change that component, it's heaps faster just to rip the whole thing off the race car and put a new one, or a whole complete unit back on the race car, and you're done within minutes type thing, as opposed to trying to rip the broken bit off and replacing the one bit. It's just easier to replace the whole lot. Jacob's ladders, we usually have like 5 or 6 of them in the race truck, and I mean that sort of job's a 2-minute job to change on a red light if the boys know what they're doing and then get to the race car in time. So all the componentry, like you say, is lightweight, but it's all quickly changeable, so that's the nice part too.
So looking here just before, near your right hand there, that's the fuel switch, I believe?
Yeah.
Fuel tap?
That's the main fuel tap, like to the tank, and obviously it's got to be marked on and off, and it's got to be accessible. So like if in an instance where we tip over or something like that, the safety crew can get to the main tap and turn it off, and stops the fuel from going everywhere. So it's pretty important that the fire crew can get to that.
Well, Andrew, thanks for taking the time to have a chat, and hopefully it's just a bit of setup changes and not having to put a new rear end in tonight.
Yeah, exactly. When that, things have gone wrong when that happens, but no, hopefully, yeah, that's exactly right. A few little wheel movements and maybe a torsion bar in the straight to victory lane.
Keep that Oz there up front, no worries.
Exactly right.
Cheers.